on the roaring 20s, creating a new storyline, which is also the theme of our event, PR and Communication Aces Summit and Awards 2022. So I would like to initiate this asking a few questions before I welcome our esteemed panelists on stage for this discussion. Number one question is, of course, I have been given these questions. Will the 20s be the most exciting decade for PR and communications with growth scaling heights like never before? Second would be, with recession looming large, how much will that impact the profession? Will that lead to even more consolidation globally and in India too? Or will the explosion in the startup economy, unicorns, continue to fuel in its own acceleration? Don't worry guys, we will get all the answers from our esteemed panelists that we have for today's discussion on this topic. We would like to welcome, yes, it is female power because we are having all the females in this discussion. Would feel honored to invite on stage Akanksha Jain, Head PR and Communications BharatPe. Please welcome Akanksha. Can we have a loud round of cheers or like applauses for all our beautiful and gorgeous women out there? Would like to welcome Shivani, who is the Director of Corporate Communications and Brand Reputations, IndiGo. Can we have you on stage, Chhavi? Please welcome. We have Ms. Kasturi Paladhi, Head Public Relations and Corporate Communications, Xiaomi India. Please welcome her. We have Aanchal Kohli, who is the Head Corporate Communications, SoCheers. Let's have a cheers for her too. Aanchal Kohli, can we have you on stage? Yes, whistles all around. I think Sir loves to whistle. That's why last event में मुझे आज भी याद है आपने whistles बनवा दिए थे. Thank you, sir. Well, मुझे अगर सिटी बजाना आता होता तो मैं जरूर बजा देती. Without having a mic in my hand, can we please pass on the mic to sir also? Or that whistle, sir, सुनाई देगा सबको. Well, would like to invite on stage the session chair, of course, Ms. Shivani Gupta, Chief Happiness Officer, SPAG Asia. Okay, so Shivani, please welcome. I would like to ask one question from you. Chief Happiness Officer is one such person who brings all the excitement and happiness in our lives. अगर मुझे opportunity मिले तो मैं बनना चाहूँगी. कैसे बनते हैं?
Shivani, you're already making everyone happy.
So stage is all yours, Shivani.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting us here. And Namita, right? I got your name right? Yeah, hi. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
And welcome, panelists. And I think it's a very exciting topic yet again. We are back to the roaring 20s, creating a new storyline. And I think just I was going through one of the reports a few days back, which said there was a survey amongst 300 business leaders in the US, post-COVID of course, and the survey said that 88% of them said that PR and comms is going to be their central resource, and that is what they bank on for all their communications and in fact their businesses. So let's start with the opening remarks here, and starting from Aanchal. Anything, and we'll just go like few, I think one by one. So Aanchal, on to you.
PR has always, been one of the most important aspects, right? And it is going to roar in the 20s. The way the teens, somewhere they change the media landscape. I think the coming years are going to be really, really powerful for the PR landscape.
Kasturi.
A very interesting number that you quoted, 88%. My organization would be about 98% of people saying that PR is extremely important because it is what it is. We are honestly the nerve center of how everything is going around, everything is being communicated, everything is being perceived, received, the kind of things that are being shared about a company. To be honest, hand on our hearts, no one cares about the company as much as PR professionals do. I genuinely, truly believe that. Because it is about emoting about the company. It is about thinking about the company as a human being, as a brand is not just about its product. A brand is not just about who works there. It's about the stories that the brand has about it and who is the storyteller for the company or a brand. No matter which decade you're in, public relations is what drives those stories. And of course, public relations, when I say public relations, I mean corporate communications, I mean influencer relations, I mean all kind of possible communications that you can think of. So 20s, roaring 20s, yes, PR is going to be important. I think it's going to be important in the next decade. It was important in the last decade. It's just that last decade probably didn't recognize us as much as the 20s is recognizing us. So yeah.
Very well said. Leekha?
So I agree with what Kasturi is saying. Of course, PR is the nerve center. We are the storytellers, but I think the storyline changes in the roaring 20s with the oft-repeated word pandemic. Post-pandemic, a lot of things have changed. We moved from traditional approach to PR to a more holistic and integrated way of looking at it. It is internal and external today, which together forms what we are telling the community, the stakeholders at large about ourselves. The shift or the paradigm shift that we see from just media relations to content or from print to digital, I think these are very well going to define how things are going to play out. And of course, the core of communication also needs to change from just being what I say about myself or what I get a third party to say about myself to more of understanding the consumer, empathizing with the consumer. You may or may not agree with the point of view, but to accept and perceive what the customer or your target audience is feeling, that would be very important as we move along.
Absolutely.
So rightly put, I think communications or PR has evolved over the years to become the mainstay as more leaders understand the value of reputation. It's just not a Flipkart when it was sold to a Walmart. So I think what has evolved, is taking up from where she's left, I think it's more to do with brand purpose, it's more to do with what you want to communicate, not just about selling a new product, going for a certain milestone, but going and actually talking about the bigger purpose, the larger purpose that you have as a brand. What is the impact you want to create? And obviously the channels in the roaring 20s will evolve. We've seen it's just not about traditional media now, while there was a little bit of a debate on traditional print. Print still stays there, but I think online is seeing a lot of more acceptance amongst leaders. Social media is picking up. So I think it's a very challenging decade, so to say, and we'll see a lot of new transformation coming up in the next few years.
Thank you so much. They were lovely opening remarks, and actually you've summed up the whole conversation right in the beginning, but we're going to expand on that. Definitely, yeah. So, coming to our, which already has been taken care of in terms of the first question, which is more like, in how do you see what has changed in past 1.5 years? I mean, people have talked about COVID and post-COVID and post-pandemic, all that, enough of it. But yeah, it's not just, I feel, the post-COVID thing that has affected all changes in the industry and all the industries. But Kasturi, what do you feel has changed in the PR and comms industry post-pandemic?
Okay. Pandemic, as far as I'm understanding it, is just something that was there in the past, right? Things were changing 2 years back when the pandemic hit us. Now it's become almost, I don't even want to use the word new normal, but okay. It's become normative to be doing the kind of things that we thought once upon a time was unthinkable because COVID changed us, but things are here to stay. For example, press conferences. No one would imagine doing a press conference online because that would be a lot of technical glitches. Still happens, would be a lot of unsolicited questions thrown in a room because I feel like a lot of times media and journalists who are working with us, who understand the company, etc., they're more comfortable sharing tricky questions or very difficult questions from a Zoom call as compared to how they would end up talking to you face to face. So, I mean, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties really. A lot of things have changed since pandemic, but they have also become normal. Online press conferences, normal. Influencer engagement, normal. You have to do it. You have to be listening to what is the conversation that's online, on social media, across different platforms, and should have some way of reassuring the customer that you're going to be taking care of the problems that they are probably posing in front of you, right? the way you're communicating. Videos is obvious. Your press release is going without a video. I'm surprised how is it working with the media right now. We actually, it's different probably for us at our company because Xiaomi is extremely fast-paced, right? We are making smartphones, and if we are selling smartphones and not giving some video references or talking to the creative universe that's actually using the product, then we are losing the ball. So, I mean, the conversation right now that we're having is post-pandemic, things have changed. They changed 2 years back. Today, they are the obvious things that every communicator should be keeping in mind. Absolutely. Adapting is something that I will take back from COVID. I don't think anything drastic has changed post-pandemic for us other than the way we used to communicate, but it's pretty much the same. Honestly, I don't have too much to add on this.
Absolutely. So I think Aanchal, if you can throw some light in terms of how do you see, fine, in terms of the communications in, as talent, how have they adapted in communicating out to the media or even to the channels, and what is it that you have seen?
Coming from the digital agency, it was probably very difficult to map the news. Okay, it was very tough for us to speak to the journalists, and when we used to do campaigns. Now, at that time, when the pandemic hit, the journalists were very against doing the promotional campaign notes, the traditional ones, right? So for us, it was very tough to speak to them, to reach out to them, and to tell them that this is something that we have done, and you need to, if you can cover. So the entire conversation with the media professionals have changed really, really well, and I think it's in a good way. It has become from just being those promotional media releases, it's now become more conversational. They look for more interviews these days. And majorly, earlier it was, the way it was for press releases. Now it is more about content. What is it that you are sending out to us, and how is it going to be beneficial for our readers? So that's the major change that probably I've seen.
Thanks. So Leekha, my another point here is that I have seen, again, it's enough of using of the word post-pandemic, but yes, things have evolved in terms of how the emotional needs of the audiences have changed. So how do you see the organizations or the PR firms are taking care of their campaigns? Are they being driven, made more purpose-driven, and how do you see that? Have they evolved?
Definitely, I would say campaigns today, like the panel earlier talked about it, have to have a purpose behind them. That is when your audiences are now connecting to them. So all companies, and I would say pretty much all, would need to have some sort of purpose which me as a layman for that company is able to connect to. So I think that is going to be very, very important. The other bit that I touched upon in my opening remark was on the empathetic part. It is also about companies, one, believing in themselves, truly knowing what they stand for, and then being able to convey to the customer what is it that you really want them to understand about you. And, in return, also understand what is the customer's perspective. And when I'm saying this, I'm with IndiGo. And it is every day we are a frontline company. Every day my staff out there, which is standing at the airport, is dealing with customers. And that's one of the first things that we are now driving. So when the pandemic was happening, there was no business. It was just communication talking. But having said that, at the back end, we were preparing ourselves for the post-pandemic environment. And we realized that this was going to be a big thing for us. And we've actually taken our staff to something known as an empathy module of training, so that when they stand in front of these customers, today you have so many of them who are flying for the first time. It is very important for the person who's dealing with them at the ticket counter to understand the needs of that person. He is definitely going to be more, he or she is definitely more demanding, have different kinds of problems, and we need to be able to, be in their shoes and be able to solve those problems. So I think that is very, very important. The other thing is using data. I think we've always talked about data being a big driver. I think it holds a lot of information, but today a lot of PR that we are driving is data driven. we are analyzing data to understand what is it that the customers are looking at, what is my NPS score telling us, and how is it that we can turn that to relay the communication that my consumer wants to get. So I think these two are very important changes and are going to be the vehicles that drive.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me one thing, when we are talking about, of course, training your teams and organizations and making those purpose-driven campaigns and working towards it, how do you train your staff in terms of, and people to the, junior most level? How do you ensure that everything is taken care of? Because I think in a position like yours, that's going to be the most challenging part, right?
Absolutely, but I also have a very large training team. We have a special training center called I5, which is very much in Gurgaon. Just to share with the audience also out here, every person, especially our ground staff from the people at the airport to my crew to the pilots that join us, go through a mandatory 99-day training, which is unique to IndiGo, just to invite them with the mission, the values, the basic being of what IndiGo is. And that is part of their sort of induction into the company. That is what we use as a base, and all our crew, including and all our employees, go through these learning programs which have a certain rigor. And we drive this very, very consciously and consistently. So that has really helped us to this step.
That's interesting because, of course, internal audience as well as external audience both are important. So tell me, Akanksha, anything that you would want to add here?
I think two things. One is that the pandemic has actually made it very important for organizations to look at their internal stakeholders, which is the employees. They've realized with the rise of digital media that these are the real advocates for the brand. And they have to really invest in kind of nurturing them, as she's rightly put. A lot of organizations, even young brands, are investing their energies into nurturing their employees, getting the employer branding strategy right, and getting them as the advocates. The second thing which I think has changed is that digital has become very important. Whether it's a crisis and you want to put out a statement, you will use, say, a LinkedIn or a Twitter handle of the brand, or whether it's somebody who's trying to be a miscreant. Again, Twitter can kind of really create havoc for a brand. So both ways, I think digital has become extremely important, and new age mediums, which essentially means videos, GIFs, all of these mediums are evolving as we speak, and they become extremely important. One thing which these guys have already touched upon is that the human angle or the humane stories have become very important. It's okay to make failures, it's okay to not be right, it's okay to be real now. So customers value if you really put out the real story out there. At BharatPe, we run a series called Transforming Bharat, where we actually show real unscripted stories of merchants. These are small shop owners, kirana store owners. They may not have ever faced the camera. We record them as they want to speak. These stories are really celebrated, and they work very well for our audience, for our employees. Also from an employee standpoint, I think digital has become important. A lot of campaigns are just run digitally, and they catch the media attention as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think it's important to touch the emotional aspect of every individual, whether it's your client, your customer, or your internal audience. So when we are talking about the growth of PR and comms sector now, what do you think, starting from you, Akanksha, what do you think are the sectors that have majorly contributed in past few years to this?
I think startups is what has really contributed. While there is a lot of work to do here, I have been seeing startups for good 10 years. There are founders who have really believed in the value of PR. They understand that it's just not about the next fundraise. And PR has really contributed to building a lot of startup brands into unicorns, into global, big names globally. So I think across industries, startups, whether it's an edtech, whether it's a fintech, PR has played a great role not only in building these brands, but bringing about transformational change in the lifestyles of people. Like take the example of fintech. Who would have thought that we would use our phones to make payments? I think PR has a very strong role to play in kind of transforming the habits of individuals. And luckily, I've been part of two of these campaigns. One was business ability way back in when Nokia launched its see these phones. So it just gives me a little bit of a satisfaction when I see our lives revolving around the phones today. And of course, digital payments. I mean, PR has played a great role. So I think startups in general have really valued PR, and I see them valuing it.
Absolutely. And Leekha, what about you? What do you think which sector would have contributed? I mean, it's not one definitely, but many sectors. But which are the prominent ones that comes to your mind?
So I would also, I agree with Akanksha saying that, being the world largest startup economy of the world with 60,000 startups and 55 sitting right here, absolutely that's driven a lot of PR-led industry, but also, I'm also focused a lot on the reputation management part. So I think reputation-driven communication, the startups have really kind of brought to the fore. And I also believe that, the traditional companies, for example, my own airline, when we were not having business for 2 months to start with the first wave, or about 1.5 months in the second wave. What was really talking was just the communication. So while we were quiet on the business front, because there was no business, but we were still flying or enabling a lot of these passages for let's say patients, moving blood plasma from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, or helping the government of India just transport the medicines or the vaccines from one part to another. PR plays such an important role in just making people aware that we are also sort of standing up for this country, because we believe we are representing the people out here. So somewhere this pandemic has also brought to fore PR as a function for the existing organizations, and that I believe is going to lead to a lot of growth for this. We are like the nerve center. We've always been the nerve center. It's probably this pandemic in some ways amplified that to the existing organizations as well. And that's going to play a big role in enhancing our scope in the future.
Totally, and I think what you said makes a lot of sense, because how people have adapted themselves to from thinking what PR is and to now adapting to a different storyline what we are talking about. So I think it's opened minds, it's opened the thought process, it's opened how things are going to be like shaped in future. It's not just one media story, or it's just not any paid media or getting ET front page. It's lots more than that. So what about you, Kasturi? What sector do you think?
I think I'm slightly biased. Of course, I come from the technology sector, and I genuinely feel that tech has honestly enabled the growth of PR in general in multiple ways, or has impacted this industry so much. Starting from people sharing news about different organizations, what really mattered to them. They use their smartphones to check or make any queries about any brand. They use their smartphones that are available to them, right? In general, I feel tech has definitely contributed a lot. It has, believe it or not, about 65% of the audience that currently uses smartphones, they've managed to access internet or technology through smartphones first. No other device has really enabled that for them. So I feel tech is at the center. And of course, I give the due credit to startups and to all the other industries that are contributing and getting PR to the center. But hopefully tech is here to stay and probably will help us grow further.
Absolutely, and I know we all want to be biased here, because I would want to say health comm sector. So yeah, I think all of these sectors in some way or the other, they have contributed a lot. And so Aanchal, if you would want to contribute here.
I think all the sectors must have contributed in their own ways to the growth of the PR industry. But coming from the digital landscape, I feel fashion and lifestyle and OTT, because OTT and entertainment industry, it saw a huge surge during the pandemic, right? And before this, they used to focus on say marketing strategies, but now PR plays a vital role in their strategy and in their budgets also. At the same time, if you see the fashion and lifestyle industry, people, I feel during this time, people were looking for more connected communication, and that's what fashion and lifestyle industry did. Giving you a few examples here, say Levi's or Gillette. showing from a macho man. Now they're showing a sensitive, wholesome man, right? They've completely changed their communication that way. So, and going on, and for both these industries, they went on from just the traditional media. They went to social media where the actual sentiments of the consumers were heard, were social listening played a vital role over there. So these two sectors dominate.
Absolutely, and I think when we are talking about digital transformation and moving from the traditional media to digital, and so many digital platforms are there. So with that comes a lot of fake news conversation and fake news around. And how do you see handling that within the space that you are in? So let's start with you, Kasturi.
I think we were discussing, these are basis the notes that we were discussing at the lounge outside. We have a war room to track every kind of conversation that's happening on social media. And believe it or not, I think it was being discussed in the previous panel, but PR plays such an important role in middle of all of that. A lot of times companies leave it to customer relationship managers and a lot of other teams to kind of get to the core of what is really the truth. Believe it or not, PR folks are very good at discerning it and of being able to connect to the consumer directly and understanding what the concern is. The war room that we have set up in our organization works very interestingly. There are 3 aspects to it. One is identify. Second is engage, because you have to engage to the person on social media, whatever is being posted. You have to double check and verify whether the customer exists in the first place or not. And third is respond, obviously. Timely respond, because believe it or not, people who will end up picking up the fake news, actually, I'm surprised to know, but a lot of them reach out to the brand also and check whether this piece of information that is being shared is correct or not. A lot of fact checkers that are there in the media help us understand a lot as to what is going behind a certain, say, a troll activity that inevitably impacts the brand or inevitably impacts the reputation that the brand has, right, in front of everyone. So we monitor this 24/7. We work, we actively engage, and whatever seems to be fake news, we actively share the information about certain thing being fake news, like, a phone, for example, blasting, fake news, certain things which are being triggered by different elements on social media which don't want to put a name to the face or face to the name, whatever it is. We actively engage with our media partners to also discern whether this is truth or not. And I'm very happy to share more than 95% of the times the media does support us because they understand that this issue exists and brands can be defamed a lot more. So I think in the background, identifying a fake profile or any fake bit of information, and as the comms team taking the onus and taking it upon your name to say, I know for a matter of fact, as a brand, I can confirm that this is fake news, goes a long way. Because what happens is if there's even a bit of conversation on what is wrong and what is fake, right, in the first wave, next time around when it happens, because you've been proactive, you'll always be kept in mind and people will come back to you to check on the facts. There is no measured or given way as to how you can control it, but proactive communication and fact-checking from your own end and from your own teams and setting up war rooms, especially in very volatile industries like smartphones, etc., is probably the way to go. It's working for us.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, this reminds me that during the COVID times, we were hired by one of the global organizations to figure out, because we are into health comm space, and that time all kind of fake news was happening all across and people were just panicking and all. So we were hired to figure out, it was like a 24/7 job. Like our teams were on their toes, 24/7, because what kind of conversation is happening in which part of the world. So it was a big task, and then going forward, I think everybody is wanting to track that. Because I think health comm sector is one, technology, and I think again hospitality sector, any sector, and fake news can just make or break the thing,
It's very much like crisis tracking, isn't it? It's like 24/7.
Absolutely, it's instant, it has to be. So Leekha, do you want to share any episode or any incident the audiences here?
Look, we go through a lot of incidents literally on a daily basis. We fly about 7 lakh people from one sector to the other on a daily basis. So we are prone to all kinds of things on a daily basis. But I completely agree with you, student. We have a very similar format for ourselves. We've got a sort of a crisis function, as we call it, which is all about crisis communication. Yes, the big ones, but it is also about tracking 24/7. What is it that is being said about us on any media? Social, print, etc. Anything that is being, that is floating around. And for us, it is not just about the media kind of, putting out fake news. A lot of times it is also, I wouldn't say fake news, but a lot of time it is also a customer angst that comes through. Could be direct, could be indirect. Sometimes it's just feeding off what someone else is saying. So that kind of really does amplify. And we make sure, or we try to make sure that we nip it in the bud by the same process. Identify, reach out and engage, and kind of understand what is the problem, like I said, getting back to empathy. But that is the whole idea, and 99.9% of the time we are actually able to control this. There are those cases when it blows out of proportion. But again, for those, it is a constant engagement. What I would say, what has been the success of this method is, earlier, where we've had these episodes, it's taken us days, the brand has taken a hit. But today, when we are hit by an episode that goes out of proportion, we may not have the legs that it is supposed to, but it's still going out of proportion. We've been able to control it in a much shorter period of time. So I think that kind of tells us that we are on the right path to tackle these kind of scenarios. I also will say that along with that, what we've done is built our army of supporters. Definitely the media, we continuously engage with them, we have knowledge sessions with them. I'll tell you one thing in this country, the aviation media is just so geeky, if I was to use that word. There are aviation geeks which exist in every part of this country, and they really want to know more. So I think we try and reach out to them, we hold knowledge sessions with them, we talk to them even on like a general common basis. Okay, our aircraft is coming, this is what it's not. Even things like that. It's just such a fascination with the whole world. So we really try and get this going because this increases the engagement with the brand. So what we also do is, for example, tomorrow I see something that's coming up to Raipur. For example, just as of yesterday, and this is a live case, there was this whole news of an IndiGo plane in Guwahati, the left wing caught fire, which was absolutely not correct. There was no fire, but there was a lot of fire in the media. And what we
Scary.
it was. But just to kind of, so how do we reason something like that? Is we reach out to the airport director. He was the first one who gave out the statement. Now, this was a Navy base. So, sorry, not Guwahati, this was Goa. So this is a naval base. And of course, if there is supposedly a fire threat, the engine or the fire engine that will come will be a naval one. So the media goes out and says, and Navy had to be called to get the passengers off the aircraft. Because stuff like that happens all the time. So what we do in the first is speak to the airport director, make sure he's got the right piece of information, speak to the ATC. So what I'm trying to say is you create these, you reach out to these pockets of influences at that particular moment to ensure that they're all saying the same thing. It's, any of the passengers could float that, any of the media or the media pick it up, but it's just to make sure that the people at that who are engaged or who could be sort of talking about this know the actual facts. So truly just identifying the problem, making sure that the facts are set out as quickly as possible, and then keeping a track of them. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think wonderfully said that identify and engage. And I think it's important, like you said, to keep the conversations on with your audiences, whether it's media, whether it's your people, whether it's your customers. So that's the key, right? And that's how you go about it. So coming back to your Akanksha, in terms of when we are talking about, not a very interesting point to say here, but yeah, recession approaching, like there have been conversations happening that, okay, like going forward, the recession. So what do you think as a PR and comm sector we should be prepared with, and what are we ready for?
I think, when you hear the word recession, generally in the corporate world, the first thing that they do is slash the marketing and the PR budget. So obviously we will have to be prepared for more ROI-driven campaigns. We will have to be prepared for more purpose-driven campaigns. We'll have to use the right tools so that we could actually showcase to the management that what we are doing is actually making an impact on ground. It's actually impacting the top line or the bottom line of the organization. And we will also have to be prepared for, using more of digital channels, using new age mediums like, for an example, not the offline press conference, the traditional one, but an online press conference, or using digital channels to actually go out and make an announcement, leveraging the social handles of the leaders more often, leveraging the owned media more often, so that we are communicating our point, but we are not really incurring that kind of an expense. And yes, obviously the storytelling will have to be very, very important. It has to be an impactful story because you have to break through the clutter and reach out to the audience, which is overloaded with content being pushed to it across channels.
I agree, content driven definitely. So Aanchal, what's your point of view? How do you see that we need to innovate and be creative, as a PR and comms industry?
Well, that is, I think we have to do that 100%. With every new thing that is coming up, and the way the industries and everything is evolving today, especially with the advent of technology, every second is a new thing for us. So we have to evolve every time. Coming on to the point that Akanksha was making, that yes, it is one of the most conscious budgets to be, but I personally believe that it is the voice of your brand. So the more creative you are, the more innovative you are, it is going to add really good value. And it is all about, how do you leverage the right tools, the right communication and the right mediums is going to play a vital role in this.
I agree. And so Kasturi, what do you see? Like, obviously when earlier recession happened and people shifted from a lot from advertising to the PR side of it, and even post-COVID, I saw a lot of budgets being shifted from the overall advertising to PR part of it. So what do you see now going forward? It's gonna be like, what part of innovation as an industry we need to work towards?
Thank you for the question. It's actually a very interesting question. One thing that I've identified, at least in the PR industry, we end up putting dividers: internal communications, public relations, corporate communications, digital communications. There are public affairs. These are dividers that we create for our own selves, and we kind of think about how we communicate in those respective silos. That's going to break, because what you are speaking to your employees internally, the communications that you're going to speak internally, is also going to be the communications that you're probably going to give and share with stakeholders in the government, because employability or the number of employees who are working in an organization is extremely important for whichever sector that you're in, right? So I think it will be a culmination of all of the various functions that we end up dividing ourselves into one. And especially on recession, since you touched on that, I didn't know we were talking about it so openly yet. It was probably still hush-hush, but on that I would like to say that being prepared for the unforeseen is what our key strength is. You don't really know which part of your business or which part of the organization will actually get impacted by recession, which side will see the most amount of impact, or so whatever it is, right? So it's pretty much what I think we should be doing is, like we have crisis manuals of everything that can possibly go wrong, and keeping all our stakeholders engaged and informed about what can possibly go wrong, because to be honest, when such things happen, it's immediate communication that you do that probably can go wrong. If you're prepared and if you are well informed, if you've informed all your stakeholders well as to what possibly can the scenarios be, there is a way that we can probably, as a brand, do justice to consumers, as an employer, do justice to employees, and so on and so forth. So hopefully, no more of public affairs, public relations, corporate communications, so on and so forth, but like a consolidated communications team that does everything and probably can think with multiple hats.
That's a brilliant point, actually. Let's see how we evolve. Yeah. Leekha, your point of view on this, please.
Um, here's what I would say, and this is something that comes by experience. I don't know how much will really be hit by a recession. Actually, I have a different point of view. I do think a lot of Indian companies have picked up the cue. And we perhaps will go through it, but it will be milder compared to perhaps the rest of the world. That's my view on this. Having said that, I think from a PR perspective, keep the voice going. And as long as you are talking, we've said a lot of things about what that communication will look like, what it should be like, that the storyline should change. But when the businesses are down or when the businesses are out, if you keep the communication going, keep your customer engaged, that will create a smoother transition for you when you are back on track. We've learned that by experience in the last 3 years, where if I did not have business to talk about, I was talking human stories, I was talking employee stories, I was in fact talking about, anything about the fact that we are now refurbishing my aircraft to make it more clean for you guys. So just kind of really, so I understand that it's a recession, the first thing that gets cut is marketing. But PR to me, and the way we kind of look at it is organic. So the more you keep your voice going, the more your views and news travel, which given the fact that there won't be much else that going on. It will ensure that you are seen and heard and are kind of breaking through the clutter and things up. So to me, it is just about continuing the engagement.
Exactly. I think it's not so much about, in terms of budget cutting or, marketing budget or PR or comms budget. If it's getting effective in all the sectors. So it's more about, I think, how do you reinvent the wheel? So to that point, I think our time is over. So maybe we can just add few lines if I would start from Aanchal in terms of how do you see in the 20s going forward what we need to reinvent?
Precisely, there should be an optimal mix of innovation, technology, while being agile to the kind of evolutions that we are facing. But if it's a healthy mix of these two, I think we're going to do as we should.
Great. Kasturi?
To be honest, I feel a lot of things the PR industry is already figured out thanks to all the uncertainties that we've gone through. 20s, they're already roaring for us. What the future kind of entails would be interesting because we didn't probably touch upon it, but there are so many more new mediums for PR professionals to explore, so many new things for people to understand about people. I think we will probably have a lot more understanding on philosophy in terms of how human mind works or how it reacts, etc. But at the same time, we will also we need to have a lot more understanding on different mediums, different challenges that come with different mediums, and how do we kind of put all of that together and actually take our brand story forward. The role doesn't need to be a scary one, it can probably be a thrilling one if we are able to navigate through the uncertainties that definitely lie in front of us.
That's true, absolutely. Leekha?
Just taking on from what Kasturi said, I think with the news traveling at a speed of in a matter of nanoseconds, it is all about keeping your eyes and ears completely to the ground. With 98% of your Gen Z spending about 5 hours a day on the smartphones, it's very important that you reach them through that medium and keep the engagement going. Like I said previously, so keep the conversation moving and make sure that your messaging is out there, whichever medium.
Thank you. Akanksha?
So I think first and foremost, it will be a holistic reputation building approach and not say internal comms, PR, merchant comms, trader comms, channel comms, whatever. So it will be more holistic, it will be more humanized, and it will be more tech and data driven. So we have to, as she rightly said, we have to put our ears on the ground. We have to literally track it real time to ensure the impact on the reputation is not too much on the negative side. and we have to keep building, rebuilding, learning, unlearning, relearning as we go forward, because new mediums will come forth, new channels will come forth, and we have to be prepared to kind of make a mark out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, sure.
I also will urge that, as we see these new mediums emerging, besides you and your team, make sure that your entire organization is well versed with those mediums. That's the only way that you will be. So trainings to ensure that your set of employees, that your internal stakeholders are well versed to understand and respond on those mediums is also going to be very critical as we move forward.
Absolutely. And I think the conversation that we were having backstage more about going forward, we are going to hire different people from different backgrounds. It could be from, like I said, we've been hiring maybe like a medical content writers or doctors, and you have been hiring people from different backgrounds. So it's not going to be the same thing as only just PR and comms. It's understanding, a holistic understanding of different aspects and speciality as well. So yes, I think it sounds from this conversation, it looks like that PR comms is more like very scientific going forward, and it's more like what do I say, mission possible that we are talking about, and very science driven. Thank you so much, and it was a lovely conversation. Yeah, I was in fact about to ask if somebody wants to. Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible? So this is a very short question, and I definitely wanted a short answer for that. So the topic is roaring 20s, creating a new storyline. So if I'm looking at the top 3 trending words, it has to be a word which will define the roaring 20s and creating a new storyline. What would be the top 3 trending words? Any of you can answer this. The top 3 words which will define the trends going forward.
Data-driven PR.
I think purpose, empathy, and connect.
I think innovative.
Honest.
Wow, we got 4 different Shivani.
I think, like I said, research and insights is something that is going to be always there, and yeah, all of these definitely are going to be connected to research and insights.
So lovely, we asked for 3, we got 5.
Oh wow, that's wonderful. And it was a delight watching all of you, all the pretty faces on dice. I was sitting there and I was so engrossed looking at all of you. I was making videos. I'm really unlike of that. I don't make videos like very often. But yes, I was. So can we have a huge round of applause for beauty and brains that we have on the dice right now?